In a world of increasing mental health challenges, psychology and faith can both provide tools for healing and wellness. This is the idea behind Journey on My Mind. Each episode, our panel of pastors and therapists sit down together to share their experiences and insights on the modern world's mental health issues: depression, loneliness, aging, addiction, and so much more. Join us now as we explore what it means to thrive at the complex intersection of spirit and psychology.
Hey, welcome to another Journey on My Mind. And we are going to venture into something today that is very common, which I'm not real happy about. But with that being in mind, Dave has had a morning this morning.
Yeah.
Dave is not happy when he got here, but kind. And
wow, just called me out.
Wow, that's
called me out.
But it's kind of fun.
He's full of joy now.
So, on that
Filled
note,
with joy.
on that note,
Did you say noit?
On that note, it would be fun to know why Lauren stopped for coffee on her way here.
That would be really fun to know.
So fun. It's really
No.
not a very interesting answer other than that it's rainy, so coffee feels good. And Dave said he was going to be late. So I was like, if Dave's going to be late,
That's-
I'm going to be
that's-
late.
there it is.
And I'm going to
There it
get
is.
my coffee.
Yeah, it's been a morning.
Yeah.
Yes. And Sam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a morning.
It's been a morning.
Yeah.
Wow, we're
The
off to
traffic is terrible.
Off to a
Coming
great
from
start.
Columbia.
Traffic is awful. Go ahead, Dave.
just saying, off to a great start.
Off to a great start.
Moving right along.
There it is. There it
You know
is.
what would be cool? We can't
No,
do it.
no, what?
But I wish that we could talk to Edwin for 30 minutes
Yeah.
Yeah.
about his
His
trip to Shanghai.
China.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something
Yep. The
we
drumming
need to
floor
do that.
went
Our
to
producer-
China
We need to
drum.
have another seat.
Famous
Way more
drummer.
interesting
One-
than anything we've been
One of
doing.
these times when
Yeah.
Lauren
Feels like it.
when Lauren no shows us,
Yeah.
we'll
just
put
win it.
Edwin
We'll put
right
Edwin
here.
That's
Yeah,
actually
that's right.
next week. I am no showing you.
Then
so.
then Edwin's
Edwin's
in
in
this.
next week.
Because
Talking about China.
and some stress attached to that. So we could
That
talk
would be a
about
good-
stress
That would be a good
and
conversation.
shingles and things. And
Yeah.
Anyway.
All the fun stuff.
anyway, but today we're actually going to venture into the topic of church conflict.
Yes.
And the psychology behind that, as well as the experience of it, because I've had my fair share, and I think
Yes.
Sam has too.
I have, yeah.
And you probably have. You were an elder in a church
Oh, yeah.
for a season,
I'll
and
never do it again.
Yeah.
Not trying to discourage anyone.
Yeah.
oh, we'll see about that.
I'll never do it again.
You heard it.
Not here though, by the way.
Yeah.
Wasn't here.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got a little soft wind up, and then I'll actually go toss it back to you guys
Okay.
about your experience.
Okay.
But
Soft wind up.
When I was researching this, I found something like 40% of pastors.
40.
Yeah. So 4 out of 10 said they were seriously considering leaving ministry within the year.
Oh.
And the top reason they gave was conflict and toxic culture within the church.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
And then I found another stat that was like some huge number that actually do leave each month.
It's huge.
And the reason that they cited for leaving was conflict. So that being my wind up, it's a very common thing that
Oh, yeah.
affects
Yeah.
people in ministry, people in churches. So to you guys,
You guys.
elaborate a little bit on
Why are we still doing this?
yeah, why are you still doing it? What's your experience been with it before we get into the
I am interested in that though. Like, why do you,
Yeah.
the people who stay, why are they staying? Like, how are they viewing it differently, or have they had different experiences? Maybe we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to. You guys want
Yeah.
to take that?
Kev, go
Well,
ahead, Kev.
conflict takes on so many different voices.
Yeah.
I'll use the word voices in a church. From the toxicity on the staff, when you have conflict within the staff, you have conflict with people wanting to be the leader of the church and they know better than everybody else. And we call those church bosses.
Church bosses.
yeah.
Yeah.
Love that.
And they just self-appointed church boss. Yeah.
I totally see that.
And then conflict between just ministries and
people within community.
It's a
Yeah.
pretty common, if you're not somewhat attuned to how to deal with conflict, the job will kill you. It will. It just will. It'll consume you because it is so common. And you deal with it on a day in day basis.
Yeah, I see lots of different types of conflict. I think, and the ways that plays out. But sitting with couples a lot, or just people, a conflict often, some form is oftentimes at the center of the conversation. You know.
But I think some cultures, some church cultures are more, it's more prevalent because there's a competitive nature to them.
To the culture?
To the culture itself.
Yeah.
It's ingrained within the culture. I've worked in those environments.
Yeah, I have too.
Not fun. It's kind of the idea of, I'm losing the word, but the pie is only so big, and there's only so many pieces to be divided among the ministries within the church, and so you compete for the bigger piece of pie.
Scarcity kind of stuff.
Scarcity is a good word.
Lump sum, not lump sum. Zero sum.
Zero sum.
There's a zero sum mentality. So once you run out, man, you're on the short end. You're not going to get. And so the competitive nature of that environment creates a lot of conflict, just over space, over resources, over, and that in and of itself, in some environments, is encouraged. It is expected, and it is it's baked into how the church operates. So if you're not a growing ministry within the church, resources become withheld and given to others that are.
Almost like a sports team or something.
Yeah.
It's like it's just it's external and internal competition.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're obviously not doing your job.
Well, it's
so
kind
we're
of
not
like
gonna give
wherever
you
the
what
ROI is, that's where you put the money, right? Or wherever you're getting the best. People,
that's maybe a better
or
way
whatever
of
the thing
business.
It's
that has different
it's
departments.
turned into
that,
a very business model
Yeah.
rather than it's industry, not ministry, is what
Right.
I've seen the church become in a lot of ways, not everywhere, but I think there's some of that at play.
Sure. And I also think conflict, like the bigger conflicts that I've dealt with over the years have been moral failures among leaders, which creates a conflict within leadership and then also within the church.
Right.
It creates a conflict that's almost...
It's that snowball, trickle down.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then some of the conflicts I've dealt with in the past was where someone, a major leader, the leader of the church, actually does something that is abuse of power or something, and it's obvious to even the other leaders in the room, and somebody with a voice that is less than, which in one case was me, said something, and they all agreed that it was wrong and he shouldn't have done it, but I was the one that was fired.
Wow.
So there's something broken in many ways around the idea of the guy that actually is bringing in the people and the money gets a pass, and there's a big conflict that arises with that as well. I don't know how else to say that without. If I put names to
Very
it,
well said.
I know. Yep.
it wouldn't be good.
Very well said.
I'm interested that you didn't really bring up like theological
I was
conflict and
gonna
stuff.
say that.
It's so interesting because I'm wondering if 30 years ago what you just mentioned would have been the same, if this is more of a modern church issue, like the fighting for resources and competition and the head pastor gets a pass, like that feels more recent
now.
In the last 20, 30 years, versus before. I don't know. And you think about in the Bible, like a lot of their conflict was like theological, kind of conflict. Do you feel like you still see that?
For sure.
Yeah.
That's.
I think that's always been there in some form. I mean, even growing up, like in my little Church of Christ, Christian church, like it was very like the community, the churches didn't really engage. Like the Catholics did their thing, we did ours, the Nazarenes did their so even that it wasn't necessarily conflict or battle, but it was like just kind of avoidance of the other in a sense.
I came up during the worship wars, and a shift in how people did music was taking place, and we were moving away from organ music and hymns towards a more contemporary version of that, and churches that were steeped in tradition. When they started to introduce the idea of contemporary music to that environment, the conflict was
explosive.
Let's use that word. Yeah.
In a
Hot,
crazy way.
and older people were like normal every other day. But yet
but lost their mind.
They did.
Yes.
Like
We had
About
we
the
had
moment.
people who had been at the same
Like,
church in the town.
threatening me.
When that all went down, they literally, people left. I mean, it was like it split the community.
Yeah.
Just having a screen with a guitar and
Right.
drums on stage. Like,
Yeah. Yep.
That kind of thing would drive me away from the church. I would never work in a
100%.
church again.
Oh, yeah.
Why are you still doing it? Like you're, you got fired for speaking up
Yeah.
against something. People threatened your life over music. Like, how are you still doing this? I want to understand
know.
that.
I do too.
I think that's
from
the
a
call.
psychological
I think that's the-
perspective.
It has to be. There's something
Yeah.
deeper than just the job about it, right? That thing you hear, that calling. Like, I think, I don't know exactly how to define that or what that even means all the time, but
Right.
I feel like there's something that's always kept me. Like, for me, I got really frustrated with the church ecumenically, like and it was like, just want to throw it all out, and I mean, probably like we all have, but I felt like and I was kind of talking bad. I would say I was didn't have a lot of kind words about the church, and I feel like this. I woke up one night, and I feel like it was the Spirit waking me up, and I just had this on repeat, which was, "That's my wife you're talking about." Right? That's his bride, and the fact that I'm just constantly doing this, but yet. So it was a real conviction aha moment for me, and so there was a shift in that moment for me too about, okay, I'm called to this place, but I have to honor it, And so what does that look like now for me to honor this? So.
Yeah, that's deep.
Sorry.
No, that's great.
I didn't
Don't be
mean to
sorry.
run too deep there, but
No,
yeah,
I think you
Do
should
it.
run as deep as
Okay,
you
all right.
should.
Yeah.
But I feel like Kevin dodged the question now.
I don't have a good answer to this question. The only answer I have is I've never felt released from it.
Because you have a background in business, and so it's not like, well, this is the
I got
only thing
other things I could do.
I could do.
For
But I
sure.
was just wondering, is there something about you where you're less likely to take things personally, or you're like
I
something
see.
about your wiring that makes you more able to be resilient to it? I don't know.
Yeah, I actually, when stuff happened to me personally, it made me more angry than it made me, like that moment when I realized that I was like the odd man out in the situation where I said, you can't do that. You're abusing your power, and everybody agreed. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. You're abusing your power. But then they all rallied to him, and I cannot remember a time in my life I was more angry, and it wasn't like angry like I'm gonna leave this. It was anger that moved me towards. There's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be. And that was the movement for me in that place. The thing that made me want to go away, the thing that made me want to quit the most was the way the church in general responded to COVID. That was a moment in time that I thought, this is our moment. This is the church's moment to really show what it is to love your neighbor. And we were anything but that. And that was when I was like, threw me into depression. That's the thing that was like, I got to quit.
Yeah.
Because my whole life work towards trying to move churches towards this place when something this devastating, millions of people are dying, and we're fighting over the stupidest things, drove me almost to the point of, I can't do this anymore.
But I would say that I totally hear that. I think the COVID thing was years in the making, not about COVID, but about
In the church.
right.
Yeah.
It's all the sort of like polarized, tribal, narcissistic culture, right? It's all the stuff that had been percolating since the 80s.
Yeah.
It was all there,
And then
it came out with its fangs.
Yeah.
Right. That's so. I
Still makes me so sad.
me too. Yeah.
So
And
sad.
COVID was the manifestation of that, but it wasn't out of the blue. It had been percolating for decades.
Yeah.
That is where we'd created this culture of we're right, they're wrong. If they think that we're not right, then they're the devil and they're to be opposed. And then there was this digging in of like, if they say this, we're going to oppose it. As opposed to, guess what? We're called to be good citizens right now.
Right.
And we're being really lousy citizens right now.
We were. Yep. And the fear that was attached to that, and then the fear that people said that I had, and I was accused of so many things during that season, that it was that's the thing that probably more so than the person, like the real personal attacks or just the stupidity of some of the leaders I've worked with, some of the conflict that I've come up against. I mean, guys sexually abusing people, I've come up against that in the environment and said, what are you doing? Anyway, I could deal with all of that because I could deal with that. I could actually fix that. I don't know how to fix that. I didn't know how to fix that.
I'm going to be your temporary therapist for a second.
Please. You can be
Let's go.
You can be my permanent therapist.
I'm just going to throw this out because I always think about emotion and what's underneath each emotion. So if you think about there are actually 5, but let's say 3 core emotions of sad, angry, worried. So worry,
I get them all.
right?
check.
Worry is almost always about the future and uncertainty and a threat to something. Like what's going to happen? What about this? Anger is about injustice, and sadness is about loss. So those are the 3. It feels like the earlier stuff, like the power plays and the different, made you angry.
Correct.
It evoked a justice ethic in you. Like and so for you, the reason why you could persist in that was, I feel like this is a matter of right and wrong and justice. And so that could fire you up, and then it could motivate you.
It did.
Whereas the other piece with COVID, even though that was in the mix, there was a lot of loss in that.
There was.
Right? It's like we've lost, like we're supposed to be a thing that we're not collectively. And there's a loss there. So that's where the sadness and the getting depressed and feeling like, I don't know if I want to be part of this anymore. So it feels like fundamentally it tapped at different core emotions for you.
Sure.
How's that for junior therapy?
That's good.
Junior.
Amateur therapy.
Yes.
So
That's how I think of you, Dave.
And quite honestly, Lauren, there were times during the last 35 years, I've been a pastor for 35 years, where I was like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I
It's
went
gotta
home,
be.
sat down with my wife and said, I think I'm done. And she, when I was in those moments, she would say, I don't think you are. And I was like, all right, I'll rethink. And then there were moments when my wife sat me down and said, I think you're done. I think it's time for you to do something else. They never matched.
Isn't that weird?
We never matched on that.
Wow.
It was almost like an internal checks
That's
and balances.
cool.
Where
And
they weren't because they weren't aligned. You
Yeah, right.
You
The
weren't
answer
free to.
was no.
You weren't free to check out.
I don't think
cool.
I am.
You know, I experienced
Can
that.
you remember?
Well, whenever I left Chicago, because I burned out church planting, and that was one of those moments where I'm like, I think I'm all done. I'm not coming back to church. But Journey, obviously, I came back to a community. But part of that was even Journey, even pursuing beyond. Like I had told myself, no. And Journey's pursuit of me in that season was also a really beautiful way that I think God reopened my heart to engage it. Like, so I think he used other people outside of me in that moment to see the beauty of it again too, you know? So.
And here's what I wonder with you, with your job. And tell me if this is true.
Okay.
Because you're the care pastor. Is
Right.
that
That's right.
the best way to?
Yeah, that's what we call it.
So you're front line. And my guess is that people come in, want to see you because they're having personal struggle and relational struggle, but also you're intercepting the grumblings and the frustrations with the larger kind of where things are with the church.
Sure.
Is that true?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, not always, but
enough.
Yeah.
So so talking on kind of the macro level, the church level, how does that feel when,
like if somebody's saying like, hey, I don't love this about the community
when they've got their kind of grumblings or whatever, does that weigh on you, or is that, do you feel like you navigate that with the same
it's a good
sort
question.
of emotional
I think
palette.
I do now. I don't think I always was. I don't think it was always an easy thing to navigate because I would take it personal because I was a part of this, so therefore I must be failing somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than kind of doing that, I think I've leaned in. I say this a lot, but just getting curious about what is it that's not aligning, and help me understand. Like there might be a really simple solution, or there might not be, but just kind of trying to understand what's underneath it. But it doesn't. I think doing it that way and removing myself from this is my fault, which is my tendency to do. Like even if it's not just me, it's easy for me to take the blame on myself.
So I hear that, and my mind is skipping ahead a little bit. Maybe we need to. I'll just throw this out there.
Okay.
We'll come back to it later. But where I'm thinking is, like, in this local church, we think a lot of people have church hurt. We're sensitive to that. They come here for healing, restoration. But I ultimately think to say our goal is that no one will have church hurt from here or anywhere can never be realized.
Right.
It can never be
Not
fully
realistic.
I mean, people bring their stuff and their expectations and what they say is church hurt may be just differences of how, things are done or boundaries that were set on them or all kinds of things. So that where we're going to get to eventually today or next time is, how do we think about managing conflict? Because that's, if our whole objective is no one can, our goal is that this is a safe place, no one can ever have disappointment or hurt or conflict or whatever, that won't ever be realized.
Yeah, it's not realistic.
I don't think we're doing our job if there isn't any conflict.
Well, and when you have, I look at when you have people close, everybody piled into a room, right? There's going to be friction that happens. Right? They're going to rub against each other. So it's super natural and normal that we would have that. But how we handle that and what we do with that, I think, is where we mess it up oftentimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
If we're doing it with respect or...
That's right.
So I think that's where we need to land.
I love that.
I'll tell you one quick thing before we go there, and that is this is kind of synthesizing 3 big studies on church conflict and saying what are the reasons why churches have conflict, and there were 6 biggies.
Okay.
All right, and
Only 6.
They overlap.
Yeah.
They're broad categories. They overlap.
Okay.
And I don't know that these are necessarily in order, but these are kind of like on our pie.
Yeah. Sure.
These are the slices of the pie.
I'll be interested.
People who are resistant to change.
Yep.
The music, the worship
screens,
wars,
whatever,
the changes in the building or building campaigns, staffing changes, things like that. So number one, I don't know if it's number 1 in size,
but check.
Change resistance.
Yep.
Number 2, personality clashes, particularly with how leadership in the church leads or governs or makes decisions. 3, power struggles within the church that are on all levels, multiple levels.
Church bosses.
Poor communication would be number 4. People having different assumptions that they come in and then they realize they're not being
That's
met.
An interesting one,
People triangulating where instead of going to this
Very
person, they're
common.
going to this person. Gossip and so on. Theological disagreements, which Lauren was saying, probably in the past, maybe more so, and now it's this other interpersonal stuff, maybe.
I get a lot
It's
of it on
still
the text
around.
line.
Yeah, it's still there.
And then the last one we've also hit on, moral failures or perceived hypocrisy.
Yes.
Right? So
That's
our pie.
Yeah. That's
Now, there
a good
might
pie.
be other things, but
Yeah.
any thoughts about those things? Let me just say them again. Change resistance, personality clashes, power struggles, poor communication, theological disagreements, and moral failures or perceived hypocrisy.
I think probably where I've experienced it most, maybe just on a day-to-day level, is in that communication piece, like just triangulation or gossip or, and then, so I definitely, all of those, yes, but that one is one that I see often.
Yeah. All of them.
Yeah.
That's a pretty accurate list.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. I think they've
And you've been through all of them.
several times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, they all play out different ways too. I mean, some of them maybe play out in more singular ways, but like the communication thing, like you said, that plays out lots of different ways.
Yeah, I think a lot of the conflict that ends poorly is usually coupled with a couple of things, and I'd say the first thing is a rigidity around theology, would, because they attached their theology to the way the church not only should operate, but also into how it should be communicated. So it spills over into a bunch of things. And so if you were raised very, very legalistic and you enter into an environment that's not, and you like the environment, but you don't like the theology, you will constantly be in personal turmoil and also in conflict with the person who's presenting the theology, which is actually really common. But they don't know that. I think sometimes they just don't know what the inner turmoil is until they are given an opportunity to articulate it. I think the second thing is, and this, I found this to be true in my first ministry, and I don't know where it fits in there. Whereas the guy who started the church was the lead pastor, lead elder,
Chief bottle washer.
Yeah, he was, and even though he morally failed, people couldn't accept it, and so they look the other way.
I'd say cult of personality.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
And
that probably fits
there was a bunch of us going,
Yeah.
what are you doing? And the conflict was born out of like, yeah, but you don't understand how important he is. You don't understand that he really couldn't have done this. He did it.
Yeah.
It's like the facts didn't matter. And it didn't matter that it was, to the life of me, even to this day, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get how you're faced with, he taught this, he did this, so he did the polar opposite of what he taught, which we see all the time. And in that hypocrisy, in that they couldn't believe the moral failure. They couldn't believe it because he was morally upright, even though it was clearly a moral failure.
Yeah.
And I found myself going, y'all are crazy.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about these sources of conflict?
No, I think, cult of personality. I think that's a good,
It probably fits into the personality clash thing, but I'm gonna coattail on something Kevin said, and it's going to be unpopular opinion. Okay.
Right.
So again, I don't represent Journey Church.
Disclaimer.
Here we go. Yeah.
Here we go.
I have no official role here. I don't.
We'll see about
Good
that.
buddy.
All right. Yeah.
There it is.
Thanks, Edwin. Edwin just asked him if he wanted to be an elder.
Yeah. He pitched me eldership here. So I actually had a little conversation with Mike on his podcast about this thing.
Yeah. That would be Mike Erie, our
Mike Erie.
teaching pastor.
I think
not an elder.
a lot of the stuff that on the surface looks like theological differences is psychological.
Oh, I believe that's
I think
probably true.
People gravitate to their particular theology because of their personality.
Wow.
I wish that it weren't true, that we had
can
this
see that.
purity of like, we just hear a truth and that's true no matter how it sits with it. But we try to right size our beliefs to fit our own stuff.
Okay.
And that's why, like, none of us have this kind of clarity of vision and purity of perception and all. We don't.
Yeah.
None of us do.
Right.
But I know that we'd love to say that we approach this stuff with like, well, we have this theological kind of framework that, you know, of course we can't deviate from it. But people who, for example, to use your point of they grow up in a legalistic church, there's some people that by personality, they love that.
That's what they want.
And other people go, yikes, I got to get away from that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not
That's
so much
interesting.
or you take anything like your own stuff informs kind of where you land on that. And so I guess my bigger point is I think we have to always look deeper than this. Okay. And I know people would not agree with me on that, and I'm good with that, but I do think that's.
I think Sam's agreeing with you.
I'm trying to.
Yeah. I mean, I wish it weren't true. I wish we had the ability to be so kind of blank slate that then we learn things are true and we sort of push on them and say, yeah, that is true, and then we're good.
But there's something that informs, right? There's
right.
Something
We have
informing
all
that.
kinds of layers of filters and stuff.
I think there's some good research on the big 5 personality traits and like religiosity and the way people engage with religion based on the big 5. We need to look it up and come back.
That would be fun.
Because I can't speak to it well enough without having looked at it. But we need to look at it and come back.
Yeah.
They've done a study
That's
on the
fascinating.
5 big personalities and their relationship to religiosity.
Yeah, I think there's some studies on that I'll look them up and
I'm
bring them
certain there are.
I would
Yeah,
love
there are
to see that.
5.
That's fascinating.
There are 5 kind of big personality traits. They're kind of clusters of
Right,
traits.
we've
but
talked
they're-
about it once
we
before,
have.
yeah.
And so there are certain, and again, we don't want to talk out
Yeah,
of school
that's
here,
fine, that's
Yeah,
fine.
but we
Yeah,
can find
yeah.
the stuff and say,
Huh.
all right, this particular trait gravitates toward this
If
particular.
you're higher on
stream of-
agreeableness or,
Right,
whatever.
So the idea of a truth search, per se, where people are looking for, okay, what is true about God, or what is true about, what are the scriptures actually trying to say? You're saying are tainted a little bit.
A lot.
You're saying they're tainted a lot by our personality
Yes.
and how we would adopt that.
Yes, I am saying that, but I'm also not saying, and this is I got to be that there is not truth.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there's not truth.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that it can't be known, but I am saying that we have layers of filters.
Okay.
That for here's my example. Let's say my glasses were those yellow night glasses, the hunting or driving glasses that shooting range or whatever that people put on. I don't know why.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What kind of glasses are you talking
Is it
about?
sad that I
Yellow?
think I know where he's going?
I don't know.
Yellow-
Go ahead.
yellow
Other
safety
people
glasses.
know.
Lauren is
Yellow
not
safety glasses.
she's not
Okay.
a dude. She
Yeah.
doesn't
Okay.
do
Yeah,
any
yeah,
of the.
You don't wear your hunting glasses?
I don't go to the gun range or hunting, but anyway.
Yeah.
But let's say I have these yellow glasses,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And I put them on, and I'm like, wow, look at that! Like the green is really green. It's really popping, man.
Yeah.
And the leaves look so bright, and
Yeah.
wow, look at how this is awesome. And so I go, Kevin, guess what? I see things as they are. I really do, and I describe it like the
vividness
This
of
is
it.
really
Yeah.
vivid, and this part's
Yeah.
really clear, and you're like, yeah, that's great, but you got these glasses on. I'm like, I know I have the glasses on, but now I see it as it is.
Yeah, right.
Right. And I get really convinced, and I bypass the fact that I've got a filter that is doing things to how I perceive reality.
Literally coloring your view.
It has to.
Yeah.
It has to.
Yeah.
I mean, think about just like to step back a little bit. Our polarized culture. Are there people, lots of people on the right, that are absolutely 100% convinced that they are right, and that their expression of politics, et cetera, is aligned theologically and with kind of the teachings of.
yeah.
And then would we say the identical thing for people on the far
the
left?
other side.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they can't both be 100% right, but they're convinced of it, and that's the nature of like what
Right.
is that people
Fascinating.
do not give room for their own stuff to be like, you know what? I think I might have a little filter here that I need to be more humble about.
have to be
and
honest
more
about
honest
that.
about.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I think that we can't get to a place of truth, or that that truth doesn't exist.
Right.
I just think we're unwise to not realize that we're coming at all this stuff, and back to our point, to points of conflict around
Theology.
whether we can sing contemporary songs and Jesus is okay with that,
Yeah.
or whether we can have certain styles of ministerial leadership, and all the things. We tend in the church to make that some kind of like moral or spiritual like stake in the ground that is absolutely true that we can't bend on.
Yeah, we always called those sacred cows. The
Right.
Sacred cows, right? That you can't,
Is that psychological?
Yes.
Okay.
which is what's fascinating. I'm like,
I'll buy it.
I'm like ready to dive into learning more about this.
Yeah,
stuff. Like,
Do,
it's
do you
fascinating.
agree with this, or Lauren?
Oh yeah, I definitely feel like our personalities.
I'm
play
going for
into how we-
backup.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
I'm
need
backing
the-
you. No, I'm
just wanted to-
nodding along.
You are nodding along.
Yes.
I can.
But people listening
Okay.
can't hear you nodding along.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I was behind her nodding
Yeah.
along too. Maybe they hear the wind from both
So,
of our heads.
so I went.
Yes, I definitely feel like the personality
Yeah.
we have, we bring it to bear on our relationships with each other, our relationship with God, the way we view the Bible and interact with it.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely.
It affects all things.
Yeah.
It can't not. That's my point.
And I don't think that means it can't go the other way. That theology can powerfully impact us, you
I would
know,
agree with that
and the
too.
way that
That's
we
right.
are built and change things about us. Like I do believe that it can go the other way as well.
But what I'd 100% agree with that. But what I would also add to that is some of the personality traits that maybe we'll talk about later are more receptive to letting it work in that direction.
Yeah. Cool.
Rather than I've attached myself to something that aligns with how I already kind of am or feel. So there's some people that by personality, they're going to be more open and receptive and malleable to good teaching and truth. And other people that by nature are going to say, this is, I am a fixed set here. I'm a closed box here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And anything that doesn't align with, like I'll go to a church as long as you're saying all the things that align, and once you don't, then I'm gone.
Right.
As opposed to now I'm curious, now I'm exploring, now I'm open.
Right.
That's different. Those are different personalities.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as we kind of put a bow on this, but move into this, this is obviously going to take some conversation, but if I'm receiving this information, the inevitability of conflict is within the church, I think, is a given. It's inevitable. You get people together, there's going to be
Group
conflict.
of humans.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Preach.
And how we respond to that and what we do with that matters more than what the conflict actually is most of the time. Most of the time.
Yeah.
And so
Good word.
And so as we are walking through this and we talk about it, whether it's theological, whether it's opinion, whatever it might be, we're hoping that what comes of this is an understanding of trying to walk through this in such a way that it restores or repairs or preserves relationship.
Preach it.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good word, kid.
So there we go. And we will.
Keep talking.
We will dive into this deep
it's so
because, Sam lit up.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
You got me going, dudes.
And we're out on
Thanks.
Journey on My Mind.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Journey on My Mind. If you enjoyed it, please help us spread the word by leaving us a review and sharing it on your social media. Journey on My Mind is a production of Journey Church in Brentwood, Tennessee. Edwin Rivera III is the show's producer with technical assistance from Randy Hansen. Grant Opperman edits the show. If you have a suggestion for a future topic or a question, you can text us at 615-861-9503. And if you would like to talk to someone about spiritual or mental health issues, you can email our care pastor, Sam Barnhart, at sam@journeytn.com.